What is up, Teens Run? Happy Wednesday. I hope everyone is enjoying their summer break so far. For Lunch Club today, I wanted to start off with a really quick mindfulness listening activity that we're going to do. So wherever you are, maybe you're walking outside, you can be sitting in your room, somewhere in your house, wherever you are. If you're comfortable and feel in a safe space to do so, I want you to just close your eyes and we're going to be listening to what's ever around us. So I have my window open so I can hear trees blowing right now, some birds are singing, some kids are playing outside, maybe you're inside and you can hear your fan or air conditioner blowing, or your family talking on the phone or playing in another room. Whatever it is it might be, I want you to just stop doing whatever you're doing for the day, take 30 seconds and we're just going to listen to the things that are around us. Sometimes we forget to, stop and take a breather during the day, and this is a nice way to kind of get our minds off of everything else that is happening and focus on being in the present moment with these sounds around us. So we're just going to take a couple more seconds, listen to those other objects around us. Think about maybe where you've heard them before, or if they bring back any memories for you. And we can open our eyes, come back into this moment right now, and we will dive into the rest of our life. So to warm us up, to get us introduced to the food system, which I think many of us already, know about, but it's good to think a little bit more critically and deeply into this topic. So what I want you to do is think about the most recent meal that you ate. Maybe this is, a bowl of cereal. And I want us to think about what activities were involved in getting this food to our plate or bowl, and who are the people that are involved in this process. So I'm not just talking about, going to the grocery store and picking up a box of cereal and some milk. I want you to think a little bit more critically about, the farmers that were needed to plant the grains and the farmers and workers who were needed to harvest these grains. This is going all the way back to the farm where these foods are grown. Is not something that we normally think of when we think about our food. We often take for granted that we can just go to the store or farmer's market and pick up the food that we want to eat. But we have to realize that it all comes from somewhere, and it requires people at every step of the way in order to get this food to our plate. So I'm going to show this little infographic here that's showing the food system. So it's showing us how these raw ingredients from the farm and how they're transformed into something that we eat, and the different people that are involved in each of the steps along the way. So for example, for crops, you need to grow and harvest them. For animals, you need to grow those animals, feed those animals, breed them, feed them, I said that already, house them, transport them, slaughter them, unfortunately. And then comes time to process these foods, package them, transport them. You need to store the foods in proper chemicals or proper containers. Then we need to market them, sell them, prepare them, eat them, obviously. And then what comes after that as well? We need to dispose of the food that we don't eat, and maybe compost, which is an awesome alternative for some food items. And because there are so many, I know this show is just a one-way kind of system, but there are so many interconnected parts that what happens at one part of this system can disrupt another part of the supply chain, and everything both before and after it can be altered because of this. So an example that is very relatable right now, I would say, is, the pandemic. So with the pandemic that has been going on, we have restaurants, we have schools, stores that were all forced to shut down. And what does that mean? That means that they don't need as much food anymore. If you don't have customers coming into your restaurant or students coming into your school, you don't need to feed them lunch or feed them food. So that demand is cut off. If we have this decrease in demand for things like, meat at a restaurant or dairy for school lunches. So you have this decrease in demand for all of these foods. But farmers, they've already grown these foods, and there's often no place for them to go. You can't just tell your tomato to stop growing because there's a pandemic going on. So they have all these foods that were already growing and maybe even harvested, and it ends up that we have actually had to dump out a lot of food. Farmers have had to dump and dispose of a lot of these foods. This has contributed to a lot of wasted food, especially in these past couple months with the pandemic. And food waste is, a big contributor of other things in our environment, such as global warming and increasing of greenhouse gases. So all these different things, you might not think of them as interconnected, but there are so many ways in which things that happen in our economy or in our environment that can affect the food that we eat or the people that are helping to make this food that we eat. So knowing this whole process, I think that I want you to think back to that meal that you were thinking about before the last meal that you had and the ingredients that make up this meal. So like we see in the supply chain here, every city cannot do each part of this supply chain. So one area or one city cannot harvest, grow, produce, package, market, sell, and dispose of all of the foods, at once. Or most efficiently. So we do have different parts of the country that specialize in different parts of the supply chain. So for example, California, Florida are better equipped to grow and harvest our fruits, while other areas of the country might have better facilities for processing and packaging our foods. So you have different areas that kind of specialize in these different parts of the supply chain, and that means that for example, tomatoes and rice. If maybe you just had a burrito, so those tomatoes and the rice in your burrito have probably traveled a couple hundred miles before they actually make it to your plate. There are, both good and bad things that come of this. So like I mentioned before, the good thing is that this might be more efficient. So you have places that are better equipped for specializing in certain parts of the supply chain, and so they can be more efficient at getting that job done. The con of this is something that we don't, again, think of very often, and that is how far our food was transported until it gets to our plate. So some of the negative aspects of this are, one, the food could go bad because it's traveling such a long distance and it might not be properly stored, and even if it is properly stored, it has to travel a long time to get to your plate. And two, it's probably it's almost certainly not as fresh anymore because it has to travel this long distance. And like I said before, each step has an impact. And so for just some critical thinking, very easy homework for you all, I want you, for your next meal, for lunch or for dinner, think about the ingredients and the components that make up the meal that you're eating. And I want you to think about maybe where these foods have come from, the people that have been involved in growing or harvesting or producing the foods that make up this meal for you. And maybe consider trying a local market or a farmer's market, because that obviously does cut down on the distance traveled from our food because it is from our local community. So I hope this got you all thinking a little bit about where our food's coming from, what we're eating, what we're putting into our mouth. And as always, I hope you all have a great rest of the week.